Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights, also known as TABOR, is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. Passed by Colorado voters in 1992, TABOR is a constitutional guarantee that your taxes cannot be raised by politicians. Voters in Colorado are the only ones who can raise taxes. TABOR has been a lifesaver for Colorado families and workers who've been able to keep more of their money during hard economic times. TABOR has also provided tax rebate checks this year for Colorado taxpayers. Fortunately, some Colorado politicians see TABOR as an obstacle to their political goals. These anti-liberty politicians have devised ballot language to confuse voters into giving up their tax rebates. Natalie, thank you very much for joining me today. What can you tell us about the attacks on TABOR this year?
Well, there's been this usual statewide attacks where they, instead of going to the voters to ask for a tax increase, they'll implement a fee. And in some of these cases, there's legal challenges presented right now that are holding these things up. But at a local level, there's also a tax. And one of those, as you talked about, was eliminating our TABOR refunds. And that could be in some cases portion of it, or maybe in its entirety. When the action, the government is, the ballot issue is a permanent action, it's hard to say how much it'll affect you. But I've tried to equate what's the best way to explain to people what that TABOR defunding or de-taboring does to their TABOR refunds. And the best way I can describe it is like a diet that we want to keep government on, like a healthy diet, all right? And I think most of us can relate to knowing that to stay a certain weight, you need to use calorie counts in part of that process and keep the level that you want. Same way that food and calories count is like government revenue. So we can just translate it to the same thing. So for government revenue, as an example, we've got food and sales taxes, okay? Another government revenue that's like a food is we've got pasta. We've got a variety of other things the government's taking in for revenue. We've got investment income. We've got the license to be able to operate your business. We've got state grants. We've got still more stuff. We've got good old adult behavioral type taxes that the government collects from us. And these are, again, like government revenue, these different sources. We've got the good old fees, which is like the cheese there. And even going to, we've got, gas and auto taxes the government's collecting. So the government's taking in all of these revenues. And we've said with TABOR, we want to keep you trim and staying in line with the economy. And when the government asked to remove revenues from those government caps, like saying, we don't want to count this tax over here towards our revenue cap. We want to be able to just ignore that, consume it, keep it. And when we don't want to include fees and licenses, things like that, it's in the same way. They're not counting those calories or that revenue under that cap. That cap then is basically, in a way, it doesn't count. And the government continues to grow and grow, just like if you're increasing your calorie count beyond what your body should have, and you continue to gain weight. And the next thing you know, you're going to the clothing store and you're buying a bigger set of pants and yet another set of bigger pants. And TABOR is meant to keep that government trim. So what we want government to know is, yes, it's okay to have cheese. It's just not okay to have 3 bricks of cheese. And when you have too much of this revenue, you're to give it back to the taxpayers. So whenever somebody sees something affecting their TABOR rebates, they need to vote no. Same way, keep our government trim.
Wow. That's an awesome analogy, Natalie. I think I really like it. It's a great way to explain. We want to keep government small. We want to keep government weak in many ways and trim down, like you said, because we know how dangerous big government can be. I mean, history, especially in the 20th century, has shown big, strong government is a danger to the population, is a danger to our freedoms and our liberty. And TABOR is a great way to keep it trim, keep it toned down, and, keep our state as free as possible.
To me, money equals power. And the more money or power you give the government, you know where you end up on on that shtick. So
Yeah, and the U.S. Constitution, in many ways, the Colorado Constitution, especially with TABOR, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights in there, it's really designed to keep the government in line and to protect our constitutional freedoms. And let's hope that voters continue to adhere to protecting and defending TABOR and maybe even expanding it.
that would be wonderful to have more TABOR. Yes, great. Thank you so
Cool.
much for letting me go through that explanation of why we want to keep government's calorie count to a reasonable level.